Hey, aloha. This is Paulina with the Rose Wool, and I've invited my dear sister and friend and my own mentor and sister mother of our children. And Andrea is native to Guatemala, and she's a sacred birth keeper and a sacred guide for life's rites of passage, and she supports and guides youth and mothers through and weaving their journey, their life journey in whatever shape or form, whether that's in their birth or through their youth development and understanding themselves from the inside out, and in motherhood as we are becoming guides for our own children. Or if you don't have children, you are reparenting and remothering yourself in some way in your evolution. And to bring in Andrea's work into this portal and what we're here teaching and guiding other people to do this within themselves. And we know at the base and at the root are setting solid foundations and having self-awareness and how to cultivate that level of self-awareness. And so Andrea is really well versed in, these aspects of what we call basket. And I'd love to turn it over to Andrea and to teach us what does that mean and how does that relate to supporting, creating foundations and self-awareness in our journey to remember who we are, and to know that we have guides and supports that are here also on the same journey and that are coming in with guidance and wisdom to support us where we're at, wherever we're at.
Meeting you wherever you are.
Meeting you wherever you are.
Thank you. Yay. Aloha. First, thank you so much, Paulina, for inviting me and for creating a space where women can go deeper into themselves and really find what they need to find and what they need to see to connect to their true essence. So thank you for creating spaces like this and opening it up for whoever's ready to step into that space of learning that's really safe and guided, and how we all should learn how to come back to ourselves with self love and guidance and light. So thank you for creating this space, and thank you for anybody that's joining us that is willing to allow us to be part guides and share what we've learned and what comes through us, so that you can also find that so much comes through you as well. And that being said, that's how I got into the birth baskets, right? Birth imprinting. It was because I was pregnant with my daughter, and this amazing woman who was a traditional midwife, and her name is Catherine Lightfoot, was the one that introduced it to me. So having that open heart that we all have something to teach to each other as women in this spiral of life is the first step. Once we open that door, so much can come in. And she calls it the four baskets, and we'd kind of use the word birth imprinting too, because it's a little less, it's a bit more to the point, birth and imprint, what happens in the process of pregnancy that we get imprinted with by the experience we have with our mothers. So the four baskets, we call it four baskets because it's four different stages. It's very interesting. The four stages of the process, conception being one, the first stage from the moment we're conceived to the first 8 weeks of our experience in the womb, the very beginning, the initiation of it all, the intentions of everything. So everything of how it begins.
The beginning.
The beginning, yeah. And then we have a second basket, which is the whole gestational period, which is the period of growth that we go through, the biggest period of growth that we grow in our mother's womb, for all those 40 weeks or so, depending on how long we stay in there. And then we have third basket, which would be the birth itself, the birth journey, when we're leaving home, what we've known as home, and where we're not yet where we're going to be at, that extremely important rite of passage, both for our soul and for that of our mother, as she becomes a mother and leaves this person who she is at that moment behind and steps into yet another space with us. And then we have the fourth basket, which is the welcoming on the other side. How are we received? How do we feel in our new home environment after we've left everything we've known? How that experience shapes how we exist, view, and feel in the world that we are right now in. And it's really interesting because, you know, 4 baskets, there's 4 stages of our life, really, you know, it's like we're a child, we're a young adult, then we become an adult, then we become an elder.
Right.
You know, in the story of White Buffalo Calf Woman, she tells her people, I will meet you at the end of the 4th stage again. You know, so if we see our spiral of life as women, like we come in and in that ending of the maiden that we were, we step into a new us. For those of us that choose to have children, and those of us that choose not to, every month we're gifted with the same opportunity to find a different aspect of ourselves that maybe we haven't seen before, and still create. Just we're not creating life the way a mother is
In our
menstruation, but we're creating a part of us that we want to share with the world. And so, you know, we come into motherhood, we come and have this joint journey with our mother. And a really important part here is that however our mother, this is one of the main reasons why knowing your birth imprint and the experience that you had in the womb, whether you're going to carry a child or not, but especially if you're going to choose to become a vessel for a new life, understanding that experience lets you know so much of this thread, you know, this like womb within the womb that happens, that gets passed on generationally, in both wisdom and a lot of the times in trauma as well. So learning that journey of what you experienced with your mother connects you back to a part of your mother that she might not even have allowed herself to see, but you know the story. The story is within you and you're living out that story. And so it's a story that has been maybe untold and has not been heard and has not been seen. And sometimes through the patterns, it's asking us to see it and to hear what it has to say. And a lot of the times what happens is the moment you step into that space and you connect to this experience and you all of a sudden see why certain things and certain experiences and energies are so familiar to you, even though your logical mind tells you there's no reason why. It's because it's in your body, it's in your cellular memory. So it's a joining of what your body has been programmed with from the moment of conception as a vessel, but really deeply what your soul and you as an energy source were programmed with the energy source of your mother and your grandmother. You know, the grandmother is a really important role in this because that womb within the womb at a cellular level, you have experienced all of their joys, all of their dreams, all of their fears, all of their pain. So
here weed whacking happening.
So weed whacking in the back.
We live in the jungle, I don't tell you.
I just think it's funny because it was just dumping rain 5 minutes ago. And so if you're in the jungle, you shouldn't weed whack in the wetness, but who knows? Maybe you do. Maybe weed whack when it's but we're all concerned about how loud the rain was gonna be. And the rain calmed down for us. Okay. So going back to,
can you explain a little bit of something about what you meant by patterns that show up? Like, why is this important in terms of knowing the untold story, or like how do those patterns how would we notice that we're in a pattern maybe that like an imprinting that might have happened, let's say at conception or during pregnancy or at birth or in that 4th trimester? How do we know that we're in a pattern in our adult current life?
Right. That's a great one. That's a great question. So I feel like the best way to address patterns is when something shows up and you're in the middle of it. It's so hard to do, but when you're in the middle of it, if you can take a moment to give yourself, just place your hand in your heart and first like just feel that heartbeat, to just regulate yourself back to the fact that everything is okay in your body. And then when you look at the situation, and if let's say the situation, you're reacting to something but the reaction that you're giving is way bigger than what the actual situation is. That is a beautiful, easy sign of an imprint of like, why am I in my reality that's not that big of a deal reacting like it is a huge deal? And you could say there's because, you know, there's been a lot of trauma stored in you. It also has a lot to do with this type of imprint in which you're playing out somebody else's experience under the same energy, not what you feel about the energy, but what your cells have experienced. And if that is your mother, right? So if your mother under a certain energy, it was so strong for her that her reaction and her emotions to it were so strong, and you were with her in the womb, you're like finding the energy. Okay, this energy made her react this way, so now I feel like under this energy, that's what I do, like I go to it, you know.
So the unconscious,
it's so
reaction to a situation, to a stressor in life,
right?
That might show up with when we're, you know, with our partner, or in a situation if you already have children, or in a friendship dynamic, or in a work dynamic, any kind of stressor that might come up. Right. That might, you know, change our heart rate, that might change, because, you know, might send us into a sympathetic, our nervous system has been activated.
Right. And that's why, like, that's why like the heartbeat is such an important one, because what your cellular body, right? This is not the rational body. You don't have memory of this. And what's really interesting is that like first, you don't have a mind memory that you can go back to and say, I remember the first time this happened to me, and that's why I now act that way. You know, like I remember I broke something one day and everybody was really upset. And so now every time I hear something break, that's how I react. Or I react completely opposite. That's like a mental memory that you have. But when there's none of that and your body just acts for you, that's a memory stored in your cellular body and your cellular programming. And so let's to put an example that's really easy to understand. It's let's say a mother is pregnant during a time of war or something really big, and there's scarcity of some sort. Like she feels like she doesn't have enough safety, or she doesn't have enough food in her house, or both of them combined. And that creates a big stress when it comes to the idea of not having something. So she has certain patterns of whether it is she gets really depressed, or she hoards things to make sure that there's something every time she does have one thing, to just keep on in, you know, just to make sure that there is something. Or she doesn't even leave her house because it's so unsafe out there that she decides to stay recluse. And she is experiencing this with a baby. So the baby's programming is at a cellular level, right? Without thinking, there's no like thought there. It's just, baby, we're feeling our mother's heartbeat every time she knows that there's not, or she sees that there's less food, and her heartbeat changes. And now the energy that's pumping through her blood and therefore into the placenta is, we don't have enough. I have to do something. And it's concern and it's worried. And everything might not be getting worse, but she is constantly making sure that it doesn't get worse. And so then we come along and we live wherever it is that we live right now, but we live in an abundance. You know, you go to a grocery store, there's anything you want from many different countries, even if it's expensive, but it's right there on the shelf for you. You know, depending on where you live, most of the time something is going to be open. There's a gas station. You're not going to run out of anything in the world that we live in. But the moment you see that there's a little less of something, you immediately start panicking. Oh my gosh, I have to go get, there's not going to be enough of this. I should go make sure that there's all of this. And then you go and you overdo it. But the reality is, let's say you are actually in a stable financial situation. There is no unsafety in the neighborhood that you live in. There is no unsafety in your relationship. There is no scarcity within your home, but at the thought of not having something, it activates stress within you, and it doesn't add up. And you're like, but why am I so anxious? Why do I keep on having these arguments with my partner over what we don't have? When we have it all right here. We're not lacking anything, but I go into it. And that is a really easy, I mean, it's one of the easier patterns to see that the reality does not add up to what you're feeling. What you're feeling is so intense, and the reality of it is not matching what they're really off balance. And so you can start going a little bit deeper and saying, well, who experienced this? If it
Ah.
wasn't me, why am I feeling it? Because let's say I grew up also not having this in my life. Because there could be that your childhood was like that. So you're going to say, well, that's my childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really look past in your life and say, well, I never really had a moment where I felt scarcity in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I react that way now? Well, now you're a mother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you were a child, you were still in a child energy, you know, but when you yourself conceived, let's say, and now you have children, then you're really linked to the energy that your mother was feeling when she felt scarcity. So all those cells in you activated to that energy. And it doesn't have to be the same situation. There doesn't have to be a war. You know, there's just the energy of the lacking of something.
Mm-hmm.
Where it gets a little bit more complex is recognizing the lack of what was she feeling.
Uh-huh.
And you're not learning how to separate. You're not discerning it. You just see the energy of lack, and you operate to stress under the lack of attention, the lack of housing, the lack of transportation, the lack of support, the lack of anything. You operate the same to all the lacks, even though maybe she was just experiencing the lack of safety, or she was just experiencing the lack of a partner. But you don't know that. You just know the energy of lack brings this up to me. So we operate that and we pull it in, you know, and like another pattern that's an example is mothers that had a really over stressful pregnancy, depending on the situation, but that it was she felt overstressed throughout the whole gestational period, and stress during the birth, and you know, the birth journey itself creates patterns of your cells, your body are so used to stress that when things are peaceful,
right,
you yourself create the stress to be within that energy, because you don't know
that's
how to
normal.
operate. That's the
Right.
biggest normal one. Like, you don't know how to operate under no stress situation, because literally every experience that you had with your mother was her being stressed out by whatever her experience was giving her. So now your cells don't know the comfort of not being stressed out.
So what do we do?
Well, the biggest part is learning how to recognize and first, you know, it is such a big tool to just put your hands on your chest or whatever, you know, like I feel my heartbeat much better here, but put your hand where your heartbeat is and give yourself a couple of breaths to feel that heartbeat and say like, okay, the first most important reality of my life is that I'm alive. And if I have the opportunity to stop, it means I have a choice, you know, and take a couple of breaths to just give you a moment to not invite the pattern in to rule you, but to tell the pattern, I feel you. I hear you. Now let me see why you're showing up right now. And so it's
create the space
that, like you're doing right now, to create a space to dive in deeper to a different aspect of yourself in a safe environment. You allow your body to become that safe space for the pattern to share what it needs to share, versus letting the pattern take over you and just continue to do the same thing. So a lot, like, you know, this is a tool I give the young girls. And if it works for the young girls, it can only mean it works for the rest of us, because we're all kind of like relearning a part of ourselves and how to do this. And if you can stop for that moment and give yourself those breaths, you can just allowing yourself those breaths allows you to see that you were about to do something that you might not want to do again, you know. So just
to choose conscious choice.
Yeah, conscious choice of what am I doing next, and then asking yourself a couple of questions, even in the moment of, you know, that's all we need. It's like, okay, is this like, am I seeing things as they are, or am I seeing things through a lens of the past? And just inviting yourself, because again, the pattern is stored in your cells and it wants to, believe it or not, these patterns don't want to continually be repeated. They want to be done. And last time they were there, nobody was willing to hear them. And so a negative emotion is a really beautiful ally. You know, there's needs, and our needs are met or unmet. And in that, The unmet needs are the ones that come with negative emotions. And those negative emotions or feelings are telling you in this moment, something within you is not being met. And if you don't address it the way you want to, I'm going to address it the way I know how to. And so if you don't allow yourself to give yourself that moment to think, what is it right now that's I'm lacking right now? What is not being met for me? Maybe I am just hungry. Maybe I'm feeling angry because I'm not being heard or not being seen or not being understood. Maybe I just feel lonely and I'm still not getting what I need. Or maybe I'm tired. Which one is it for me before I jump in? Because then you make a conscious choice. Then you're like recognizing what's happening and matching it up to how you really feel. Because if you don't allow yourself for that, your body will say, okay, we'll take over. We know how to do this, but we know how to do this might be, I'm just going to start yelling at everybody. I'm going to break something. I'm going to say nobody loves me here and I'm going to take my things and leave and walk myself out of a situation where I just needed to be heard. And so if we don't consciously do it, our cells, our body will do what they've known how to do and they're programmed how to do. So if our mother didn't have the opportunity, and this is why it's important, even if you're not going to have a child, you know, because it's going to play out in all your relationships and how your mother viewed herself when she was with you, how she viewed women in her community, how she viewed family, how she viewed the transition is how we are going to view ourselves, how we are going to feel about ourselves, how we are going to view those around us, how we are going to feel within our community or in our family. So it's all really linked, and we have to learn how to discern the difference of what is hers and what is mine is probably one of the most beautiful journeys you can go into. And I know so many people think they're going to come in and they're going to judge your mother, and it's so the opposite. You all of a sudden see her in a lens you've never seen her before. She stops being your mother and she becomes a sister in your circle. And when you hear her story, you feel her heart. And you all of a sudden, all the judgments, they're dropped. And you're like, whoa, I never even thought that you were seeing yourself that way. I didn't recognize that you didn't trust yourself. And now I don't trust myself. And the beautiful thing for baskets is that once you step into that space and you allow and you can hold space for the patterns and you want to just hear what they have to say and validate that they're there, whether your mother knows this consciously or not, you're releasing her from that pattern too. In a way, she is tied to a guilt that she knows she gave you that. She will recognize it within you, what is hers, but she can't say anything. She doesn't know how to go about it. And so when we step in and we say, oh, I see. Oh, it's not mine. I don't even have to do that. I don't even have to yell because of these things. I can choose to do something so different. And then the pattern just all of a sudden from her side as well, this is energetic, very, very soul energetic. She starts feeling less guilty about what she's given you. And the relationship has an opportunity to see each other differently. You know,
we were just talking about that like as we're talking about the how time is not linear in this way, that, you know, I always say like my children are guiding me through these, you know, these shifts and these awarenesses and these transitions, because they're going to highlight, they're going to act out or highlight or point things out in some way. So then I move through that. And then inevitably it's helped support my mom in that way. Cause you're right. Cause I see her now through this. I've sat, you know, moving through my own, you know, birth imprinting baskets with Andrea, and being able to see my own mother through a different lens of compassion, you know, versus judgment for so much in that way. And it releases her. It gives also her the permission. And then she's doing her own work now. And my mom's actually one of my clients, by the way, which is a whole other level of like deep healing, generational healing. But then now when she moves through these different pieces, and then it unlocks it for me, and then unlocks it for my daughter, for my 3-year-old, you know, and also my son too, my 6-year-old, and for my own children in this way. it's this whole aspect of this energetic liberation, and that we get to so much of the life that we live is so, we don't even know. I feel like that's what I'm like learning through human design of like, whose life have I been living this whole time? Like whose life have I been living? So that's where I feel like having this added layer of understanding, your own birth imprinting. And even if you don't have a relationship with your mother, or maybe she's passed on, and how to continue to do this work, because you're going to see yourself. Well, that's why you're doing what you're doing right now. You're desiring to see more of yourself from these different angles and lenses. So as you stop and you take this moment, and when you're constantly just in a state of reaction without understanding why you're doing what you're doing, and you've just been doing it without having understanding, this is why this foundational layer of self-awareness is being cultivated. So so we have the first one is in the conception, right? So we have that conception. So even so, let's say we can't ask mom about our birth journey, right? And we're doing the first one, you're sitting with me and we're talking about conception. What's to understand what happens in that moment, what patterns might show up in my adult life with conception, right. And then maybe a tool that you would guide me through that.
Yeah. Okay. So because first, the reminder for those of us, like I'm one of them, that don't have our mother in this physical realm to ever go back to for a question. The first reminder you have to just give yourself is that her story is within you. She doesn't have to physically be here to tell you anything. Her story is with you, and you just have to feel what your body is telling you and letting you just trusting that your body is going to guide you. When you hear something, when you're going through something, your heartbeat is going to tell you, this is what you need to pay attention to. Here you go. Let me change the heartbeat rate. So you have a moment of saying, oh, what is going on? That moment when you recognize in a situation that your heartbeat changed is a moment when you have to allow yourself to take a step back and say, something shifted there. My heartbeat is not the same. That means that under that same energy, along your experience, both one that you can remember and one that you can't, your body already activated to shift. And it started a process of changing the situation already. So the first one, because it's conception and in the intention for things, a great way to see things is you can see it when you start your day, or you can see it just when you start a project. Do you start things intentionally? Do you go at it with an actual intention of having a culmination of something, or are you just going it because it's right there? Oh, there's a possibility. Let me give it a try. When you start your day, how do you set your intentions, or you just completely flow with whatever has to come? And the reason why, because, in the moment of conception, it can be very different things. The experience can be, it was planned and it was intentional. And therefore you are a very intentional person. Things that you do always go with an intention of a culmination of some sort, whether it's just for you or for the people around you. But when you start something, you're actually thinking about where you're going to, versus, let's say, a not planned pregnancy, but still wanted, pregnancy. In that moment of conception, it happened, but it wasn't what either parents were thinking about. It just kind of happened. And then you are also one of those people that you like do things, and without knowing, you get yourself into it. But once you're there, you're like, oh, but okay, well, I guess this is it. And I'll just follow through and I'll culminate it anyway. And I'm not going to reject it. And I'm actually just going to embrace whatever it is. And so you might start your day like this. Well, I have no idea what's happening, but whatever it is, I'm okay with it, And then you have, a deeper, maybe more heavy one, in which is like, it wasn't planned and it wasn't wanted. So there's a lot of rejection. So you try not even to start things that way. And when you get caught into a situation where something already started, you're rejecting it. And you're like, no, it's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to finish this. Or you just don't finish it.
Or don't do it.
Or you just don't do it at all. You don't even try. So that's like for the first one. And that's like a simple, not too deep, but how we set intentions for
How is that
ourselves.
intentions? Okay.
Right. And then maybe another example could be like the birth journey, right? The opposite of when it started, like when it ends. How do you deal with change, like big change where you know it's coming?
Mhm.
How do you prepare for change? Do you even prepare, or do you just forget it? I'm not even going to think about it until it happens. You know, maybe our mother was like that. Maybe she didn't have the support. She didn't learn anything until it was already there. And then she kind of handed her power away and was told what to do.
Mm.
So then maybe we go about change that way, and we just paralyze and wait for people to tell us what to do, and don't trust that we have an intuition on how do I go about this? What is my next step? No, I have to wait for somebody to tell me what I have to do. Even though I can see clearly what I need to do, I won't do it until somebody tells me what to do. Because your biggest journey came with that. Or maybe it was a very empowered journey, and
Mhm.
your source, your mother, your vessel, prepared herself. She learned everything she needed to do. She got herself the support that she needed, and she birthed knowing that she could do it, and she trusted herself. Then you, under change, don't panic.
Mm.
You know how to flow. You don't put walls up, and instead you are like, okay, how do I go about this? And you really trust that whatever decision you're making, it's going to be the best for you. So those are like two different like ways that we can see how our imprint or our baskets have effect on how we start a project in our life, or even how we start our day. And if that day, like a great tool is if something you had planned, if it changes,
Mhm.
how do you address that change? And really be raw about it to yourself. You don't have to share it with anybody unless you want to, but in the moment of the change, be honest with yourself of like, what is that raw emotion that shows up in you? Are you angry?
Mhm.
Are you like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's what we're gonna do? Do you panic? Do you call somebody else to help you? Do you just avoid doing anything? Or do you how does that show up for you when
Mhm.
change of something that was already planned switched? Because that's a big one, even for the conception and the initiation imprint, because depending on what your mother had planned for her life and the moment she got pregnant, and how that shifted her mentality of what she had planned already and how now it's changing,
Mhm.
what her raw emotions were are naturally going to be our biggest raw emotions about change. So that's a good one to start with,
Mhm.
just navigating with yourself and being like, oh, I never even thought about it that way, you know.
Did you want
Um,
to check your? So she's
I
on
did
birth
actually.
call.
On
Check
call
your-
for birth. No, okay,
Okay,
it's not them.
Okay.
Good.
So we have the first, that's the first birth imprint is conception. And so then after we move to transition from conception, that we go into the second basket, or is there
Yeah, to
something that
so
closes that one
what's
first?
really interesting, because I know that the fifth element has a lot to do with the energy
Right.
of our energetic body, you know. Um, when we come in, you know, we come in through our energetic body, like different, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we come in from the ether,
Mm-hmm.
and then we go into like, we tap into how our mother sees her life, views her life. We fall into how she speaks of herself and of us.
Mm-hmm.
Does she speak of us like we are a soul? Does she speak of us like we're something else? Does she speak of herself with empowerment, or does she speak not even of herself? You know, and that's a big programming that happens for us. Like,
Mhm.
then how does she feel about herself in this situation of experiencing this with us?
Mhm.
Is there rejection? Is there embrace? Is there
Mm.
confusion? Is there love? If there's trust, you know, how does she feel in her power? Like really in her willpower of doing. And then as we go deeper, you know, how does she feel about being a woman? How does she feel about pregnancy? How does she feel
Mhm.
about how women are? Does she look up to them? Has she been, you know, scarred by them? Does she feel abandoned by the women in her life?
Right.
And then that's something that we grow in, literally. We're growing in how she feels about women and motherhood. And so that's why some of us reject motherhood so much. No, I will never have children, because the pain that we experience, not, you know, what's really interesting about birth imprinting is that once you leave the womb, if you never pay attention to any of these, you start creating the same situations around the same energy, kind of like the stress, right? You are comfortable in an energy, even if that energy causes you pain. but that's what your body cellularly is known and is comfortable in. So we might attract a lot of that energy and place ourselves in that situation. And now we have an actual memory. So now we have an experience linked with that pain. And now our brain creates a neuron link and say, oh, I remember this energy. And now I have an experience on this side that validates that.
Right.
Now I can say that this is actually how it goes. Let's put an example. A baby girl was born in the time where this is just, I'm putting this example because it's an easy one to understand. And the baby gets slapped in the butt by a male doctor, right? And so her first programming of energy out on this world is men hurt me. It's just that simple, right? Or you get vaccinated by a man, or you get separated from your mother by a man, and all you need to go is back to her. Anything that happens in the first 6 hours after you leave the womb,
6 hours.
and it's a male. So your first, like stored memory on this side is men cause me pain. And then you become a little girl and now you're at the park and the first person to push you in a park is a boy. Now you have a second reality. Oh, boys hurt me now. And then you go on with that validation for you.
Right.
Until you end up in relationships where men do hurt you, either physically or emotionally, or they're fully disconnected from you, or they're the reason why you're disconnected from yourself. Because at the moment, they were the ones that pulled you away from your source versus bringing you into the source that you needed to connect to. So they are the reason why I can't connect with myself, And so now we've created this reality and we live upon that reality. But it all really started from a different energy that was maybe the experience that maybe my mom had. And so I already kind of had it. And then this last basket, actually, which is the first 6 hours after birth, is deeply important because it's how we are welcome into this world. And if if we're not welcomed and we're not treated with a certain gentleness and love and care, then we program our mind and our body at that point that this world is going to give me that type of treatment. I am not going to be welcomed as I am. And a part of me has to figure that out. So, and because the last, the journey out is through the last connection that you have with your mother, through what is known as the root chakra for the people that believe in the chakras. But if you don't, there's a lot of energy stored in your body here. Like when you get upset, and for some of you might already know this, but the ones that don't, if you haven't paid attention to it and you're just becoming used to these sensations in your body, when you get really upset next time, feel where is the first place you tighten in your body. And it really is your vulva, your yoni area, you contract from there. And so when we're giving birth, the contraction and the expansion, when a mother can trust, she expands differently and she contracts differently too. The contraction is only done by the body, but not by her in an energy. And that's the last connection we have with our mother in our birth journey. The last thing we pull from our mother is how grounded she feels through this huge change. And if she feels ungrounded, well, you could say that energetically we come into this world ungrounded. And if she feels grounded and rooted, even through the pain, even through the change, then we come in. That last gift she gives us is that sense of grounding or rooting, So even to that very last moment, we still pull a little bit on her energy of how she's felt as a woman throughout her whole life. If that makes sense. But I think the biggest tool that I could give you all for like anything that shows up and anything that comes in with a pattern is just
each of the different transitions.
And because each transition has a different intensity depending on what your experience is. So I don't know if I can actually give one that's for everyone, for each of them, other than really allowing yourself to feel your heartbeat and how intense it got from one moment to the next, recognizing first that you have a choice in bringing that heartbeat back to where you want it to be. That's like the biggest thing. When you allow yourself the choice of like, I don't even have to respond. Like, I just have to breathe right now.
Mhm.
You know, in doula world, there's an acronym that we give moms for like when you have to make a decision,
Mm.
and it's brain. And the first one being like, what are the benefits about what I'm about to do? And I love to bring this into patterns because it's the
Mhm.
same thing. You're about to make a decision of continuing something or breaking that cycle.
Mm.
So it's a big decision that you have in your hands, equally as a decision of how you're going to give birth. So benefits of what I'm about to do. Is yelling really going to bring me more benefits than if I stay calm and quiet? What are the risks
Mm.
of what I'm about to do? If I'm about to yell, what does that look like for everybody else involved and for me afterwards? You know, what are the alternatives? Can I do something other than getting upset right now? What are my options here? And what does my intuition say I should do? Does my intuition really want me to do that? Not my body.
Mm.
My body wants me to react on that pattern because it's not thinking. It is just doing. But what does my intuition tell me that it's the best thing for me and for
Mhm.
everyone around me right now that I should do? And the last one is just a really beautiful one. And standing for nothing. What if I do nothing right now? And I just sit here and I breathe and I calm myself down. Does that allow me the chance to step into a space differently? So that is the best tool, I think, no matter what the pattern is, because the experience of the womb can mean one thing for somebody and very deep and, you know, strong feelings for somebody else. So the tool might not be the same for everybody, but this specific one of taking a moment to breathe and checking in with yourself of why you're about to do what you're about to do,
Mhm.
why you're about to allow this pattern take over you instead of inviting it in and say, what do you have to show me about me
Mhm.
right now? You know, is the best tool, I think. We can start with patterns.
That's beautiful. So brain was benefits of what I'm about to do. The R is for risks of what I'm about to do. The A is alternatives. What are my options for what I'm about to do? And intuition, best for me and best for everyone in it's involved. And N is doing nothing. If I do nothing, right? And so it sounds like the first step is just checking in with your heartbeat. And this can be a good space for people that are just learning how to reconnect to their body. And they don't know where to start, or they don't feel safe quite yet to connect to their body or to explore some of these deeper layers of what is stored in the body.
Yeah.
Just starting with your heartbeat. Just the concept of putting your hands on your body with intention to pause, to take that moment, the sacred breath. The first thing that we do when we come into this life, and the last thing that we do when we leave this life is our breath. I almost want to go the other way around from the N to nothing, in that space of the nothing.
Right.
And then seeing what my intuition is guiding me to the alternatives that are available.
Right. To the risks
And the risks if I don't follow my intuition.
Right.
And then what are the benefits of me following my intuition?
It's so beautiful. Yeah. Does it even spell it? It might not spell it, but there you go. You just scale it down, scale it up.
But the level of intensity, I feel like depending on where you are at in your journey, either you're going to follow the brain or you're going to follow the reverse, which is the intuition, which I love that, you know.
Right. And maybe that's where like human design really could help you see which one you're naturally going to direct yourself to. Like me, I'm naturally going to always go with my intuition first. I don't even think, I'm just like intuitively, I feel like I need to do this. And then I have to be like, wait a minute, wait, does it really make sense? Even though my intuition says so, you know, I just need to double assess everything. So based on your human design, you probably are going to naturally be attracted to one of these more, and going to try to take yourself there first, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you allow the space to see yourself in it.
Well, that's what human design does, though. It actually does that piece. It reconnects you to the core of your soul, meaning that like what is deviant from that those are the layers of conditioning. Those are the patterns that we've enacted from. Those are the cellular memories that aren't necessarily our soul memories, but we are also maybe here to help clear those pieces. They'll clear the cellular memories, clear that for our lineage. You know, a lot of those who are the cycle breakers in this time, like we heal it. So we're the prayers to our ancestors. We're here to heal it and feel it, you know, so we can unlock everybody. But besides all that, for yourself first. And then it does that automatically across the timeline.
Because I feel like there's something I need to say about, like, you know, this specific talk, we've focused on the birth imprint, but one of the things that is really important to remember is our spiral life as cyclical women. And so we come in the first rite of passage that we get is our birth. You know, that is the first passage into this lifestyle, into this life, you know, earthly life. And then we have our childhood. And then we leave that childhood by starting to bleed. And that's another rite of passage. And then that marks ourselves into adulthood. And now adulthood can look differently for us. We can either choose to stay in womanhood or we can choose motherhood. You know, there's no right or wrong there, only the right choice of what feels best for me. And if we choose motherhood, well, it's what we've been talking about. You know, if you're going to choose to be a vessel, or for those of us that chose to be one and we learn about the imprint afterwards, it's still a beautiful tool to see. It's so much easier to see what you've given to your child once you're aware of your own patterns and what you experienced with your mom. And all of a sudden you see, you're like, oh, and you can take that away from your children so easily. Be like, oh, you see, you're acting, I can see that. And that's here, that's mine. Let me give you the freedom of not carrying that.
Right.
Let me take back what's mine. I'm learning how to work with my own thing, but in like an emotional luggage way, I take it away from you. You don't have to react like that ever you get upset. When that happens again, we can see how you feel about it instead of how I taught you to feel about it. So as a mother, not only do you work on yourself, but you lift that from your children. And then that lifts everything from you even faster. And then for those of us that choose not to be mothers, it still shows up in every aspect of your relationships, in your sisterhood. And like that one is a huge one. You know, if your mom felt wounded by sisters, you've got it with you. You're going to, like, whatever you do, you're going to find a crack and say, no, I see that. I see where I'm not being seen. I see where I'm still competing. I see where it's unbalanced. So even if you chose to not be a vessel, it's still a beautiful space to work with your body in it, because your body is going to be subjected to the different energies that she might have been subjected to, and you're pulling it in. So that can be with your partner, like Paulina said, it could be at your workspace. It could be just with people in general. Like, how do you really think people see you? Like when you walk into a room of people you've never known and you've never met before, do you feel, yeah, I feel seen. I don't have to do anything other than be me? Or do you feel like, I don't know why I'm here. I'm going to have to try really hard. I don't know where to start. And you doubt yourself. You know, those are big imprints too. And so it doesn't matter if you're going to choose to be a vessel. They're going to show up for you in every relationship you have. But then you also get to spread that once you work on it, and you stop judging people and you start seeing, oh, I see what you probably, it stops being like, oh, these people are so whatever. And then we throw in the judgment. And then it starts, you see them with a compassion of like, you know, maybe I have no idea really what your journey was. And because I have no idea, I can't say, I can't believe you just spoke like that to somebody else. I don't know what your journey was, but I hold space for you from here, you know, and maybe you get to choose who you don't engage with based on maybe what is too much for you. And you can't handle holding space for somebody else while you hold space for you. And you allow yourself the permission to say, I'm not ready for that relationship right now. I think I need to work on this a little bit more, you know, and then, but both of those still take us to another rite of passage of all of us stop bleeding at some point. So we all go through a different passage, which is menopause. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because whatever happens in womanhood, whatever luggage that was not ours, that we continue to carry, we will continue to carry into our next phase too. So we went through womanhood carrying our stuff in our mothers and our grandmothers. And then we're going to choose to stop bleeding and go into a deeper aspect still carrying all that luggage.
Mhm.
So it's beautiful to allow yourself to work on all these aspects and get to know your tools like human design and how to get to know yourself differently and more connected to who you are. Because then each rite of passage allows you the opportunity to say, I'm putting this one down. It seems like it's not from where I headed, like I went to take all these jackets and I'm about to go into the tropical jungle. Somebody else packed. That's my wanted to go analogy. It's like somebody else packed the backpack for you and said, here's a journey backpack. And you're like, cool. And then as you're going on your journey, you're like, man, we must have been in two different places because I'm really cold and everything I have here is for warm weather. Who packed this bag for me?
Mhm.
It wasn't you. It was somebody else. They packed it for what was working for them. And that doesn't mean that you have to keep it going. You can say, this is so beautiful, but I'm going to unpack and put it right here. Maybe somebody's going to pass and they're going to take a turn right there. And that's the right place for this item. And instead, I'm going to put something in here that works for me. And you're taking it out with love. You're not dumping it. You're not like judging it. You're just saying, yeah, we're in two different places when we pack this bag, but it's not mine. And I have still a lot to walk through. And I can't put extra weight that I'm not willing to carry because it's going to change my journey. I might not be able to stop at the waterfall that I just saw because it's so heavy. I'm like, gosh, if I stop, just the thought of like putting it down and putting it back up, it's too much. I just need to keep on going. So you might miss out on so much more just to not put it down. So it's like repacking your bag for the journey that you're willing to take yourself into and finding great, some gratitude for the things that were given to you. Even if they were painful, they were still, given. So we can put that down with love too. And then ultimately, we're all transitioning out this this life. And because none of us know when that passage of leaving is happening, we definitely want to try to clear our emotional and energetic luggage as much as we can, because it's going to be harder when we leave. And that I've experienced through personal experiences from friends and people in my life of like, if you're holding on to too much here, that journey is not going to be a light one. And it already itself is a big journey. So allowing yourself, whether you had children or not, to work on as much energetic as possible with tools like human design that brings up so much of how you can go around so many different things and really stay honoring of who you are and mindful of others around you. It's a great way to learn how to just put some luggage down, some weight down.
I feel like understanding where we've come from in this way with our own journey helps that passage of where am I desiring to go next, even though you may be like out and like you don't know what the path is going to look like, but you have a desire of what you want to feel like on that journey and what type of pack do you want to carry, and is it a yacht full of your pack? Is it a sailboat, or are you just swimming?
Like it looks different to all of us.
Depending on what that looks like, and that you can go about life in a very connected way, and it opens your perspective of who you connect to. I feel like the people that are more soul embodied, you can feel that in their presence. You can feel that, you can see like the glimmer in their eyes. You can see and you can feel people that are more in tune with who they are. And and we get to choose what type of life do we want to experience. And for those of us that are here on this path and on this journey, we want to experience more of ourselves from the inside out. And that is how we relate to everyone else, is how we relate to ourselves first.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, it's really important that, like, I remember Catherine sang a song once, I'm trying to remember the lyrics. It was like, look where we've been, look where we're going to. And it's just very simple. When you look back at the patterns of all that we have already experienced, we're making a conscious choice of we're going to the same thing that we've already known, that we claim have caused us pain, and we're conscious of it. Or I can look at where I've been and now see where I want to go to. Like it's very eye-opening, not just to the body, right, but to the soul. To remember that there's a choice, that there's always a choice on how we move forward. And if we didn't, make the right decision today, then I can, rule that out for what I want to try out tomorrow. Like for some of us, it's going to be trial and error because it's how we have been conditioned to. For some of us, it's going to be more intuitive, depending on your journey. And for some of us, there's going to be moments where we're going to think we have no idea what to do. And that's the moment where you sit with your body and you say, we do. We do. Like you're telling me right now it doesn't feel good for me. So I do know what to do. What I need to do is find what makes me feel good. Like that it doesn't look like this. So trusting that you already know the answers. When I sit with people in birth imprint, I start with that. Like nothing I'm about to tell you is something you really don't know. I'm just reminding you that it's there. Like I don't have the power over you. I'm not telling you things that you don't know of yourself. I'm just reminding you that you know this and that you have a choice to make. I'm not even going to tell you what choice you're going to make. I'm just going to tell you it's there. You're the open book. Like this is the cathedral. This is the temple. You are the walking temple. It's not so much, it's nothing, it's outside of you, but it's within you. And the more you connect to that part, the more you can give that back to everybody. Once you sit with somebody that feels that way, you feel that energy. And it's like, somebody touches, it's like mycelium. We're like all just, sending out our trendles there of like, I touched you with like all of this amazingness. So now you know that it's within you, so we got to just open up and surrender.
That's the cornerstones of all of this is surrender, trust, and faith in your journey of undoing, being, and becoming. And it's in that, and that's what that brain analogy, acronym, right? Of that in that N and that nothing, that's that middle ground where you can teeter of like, I've seen where all the deconditioning, all of the burning away of the illusions and the processes that you're in, that life will give to you, or you're going to choose to do it. It's either a choice, like I'm going to choose to go through this journey, or life's going to do it for me, one of the two. And when you make that choice to go in and to do that, you get to decide where are you becoming, and it's that leap of faith from the caterpillar and the chrysalis, and that the dissolving that has to happen in order for that emergence. But it's pure trust in yourself. And it's that we don't tell our bones to grow, they do. So the same life force that's telling that rose to bloom when she's ready, that we too are trusting in our own evolution and our own process of growth when we're tuned into that, and to trust and to allow it, which is that, we have that trusting in the ego or trusting in the intuition, and which path, where are we putting our trust? Perfect. Saved by the by the bell. So we'll just say thank you to Andrea for sharing our wisdom of birth imprinting and the patterns that show up for us, and this process of leaning back, learning into guiding everything that we're moving through with a fulfillment through this process is guiding you back home into yourself. That we have these elements of wisdom we get to share of coming back into who you are. So knowing your story, knowing the story of your cells, knowing the story of your birth, and the patterns and your imprinting is the story of recognizing, remembering that you're the narrative, you're the author of your own life. And which story do you decide to tell is going to be up to you, and having that conscious awareness of what chapters, those 4 different pieces in your conception and in your childhood, right? Well, I mean, like in the 4 stages of,
and in the 4 stages being like, if you see it like for like a different way, like, and how things are initiated for you, how do you grow with that? How do you culminate it? And what happens after it's done? That's the biggest part. Like, what happens when it's done? What comes after that? Like, now how do I move forward with it? So there's all this beauty in those 4 stages. Yeah, your childhood, the young you, the maiden you, the woman you, and then the elder. You know, I was listening to Gabriel Mate the other day, and he said something so beautiful about how our culture talks about elders like elderly versus indigenous cultures that talk about their elders like elders, and how that change really disempowers you to think on that other stage of your life versus you are the elder in the making. You are the elder that will become that for somebody else. And so you're already, when you work on when there's no timelines and you see yourself as a child and as a maiden, and even if you don't have kids, as a mother, because like Paulina said, you're mothering yourself every cycle, you know, and then as an elder that is wise enough to know how to tell yourself what to do. When you trust that that element is within you, then you trust your intuition a little bit more.
So we have conception, the gestational period,
the birth journey, and then the immediate postpartum, the first 6 hours after birth.
the like 4th trimester too, and like in the first 90 days too, even after
Well,
that,
yeah, I
right?
mean, that goes into like a different spectrum, but yeah, but like the birth imprint itself is immediately the first 6
The first
hours,
6 hours.
because the monks, the Vedic, you know, tradition says that this first 6 hours are the purest your consciousness is going to be. It's like a completely untouched consciousness. And so whatever happens in those 6 hours is programming you to how you're going to deal with the world that you exist in. It's telling you what world you came into, which is why it's so important. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Andrea. I love you. Love and aloha.